Recording in progress.
Okay, we're good.
All right, good evening, everybody. We'll start the agenda for Protection and Policy Committee. It is now 6 p.m. for Monday, February 26th. Roll call. Alder Morgan.
Present.
Alder Grant.
Present.
Here.
Okay, I'm here. We're all here. On to approval of the minutes, or agenda, excuse me.
I move to approve the
All
agenda.
right, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. All right, approval of the minutes for January 22nd, 2024.
I move to approve those
Do
minutes.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. On to regular business. Number 1, consideration with possible action on a communication by Alder Chris Weary regarding the city clerk's office allowing election observers to witness the processing of absentee ballots from receipt of ballots from the county clerk through completion of the process on election night. I request that city council to amend or create any city policies to achieve this outcome.
Assistant City Attorney Mathers here on this item, if you have questions for her on the item.
Good evening, everyone. So it's important to clarify, make a very important distinction right off the bat. There's a very important distinction between being an election observer and just being able to watch things that are happening in the government building, including things related to the election. So an election observer is something that is defined under the law. It is defined by statute. The legislature defines it in the statutes, and then the WEC, the Wisconsin Elections Commission establishes, they've actually got a proposed rule making its way through the rulemaking process at the state level right now, setting out all of the different regulations that apply specifically to official, formal, whatever you want to refer to them, election observers. So I just want to be very clear. When we talk about election observers, we're talking about a term of art that is used in the statutes. We're not just talking about observation in the kind of colloquial, everyday use of the word observe, right? In that sense, when we just talk about observing things that are happening in the building, watching things, everybody, as a citizen, as a member of the community, you have a right to access government buildings, to petition your government. You have a right to come into the building and watch things that are happening in the parts of the building that are open to the public. That includes the public portion of the clerk's office, meaning the portion inside the doors that is not like the employees only area. Whether you do not have to be a formal election observer to be in that area. You can, any person can observe the activity of the clerk's office, whether an election is going on or not, as long as they're not being disruptive. And that's the certain regulations that apply to election observers, such as how close you're entitled to be to a counter or to certain things that are happening, and other similar regulations and restrictions. You don't have those same rights and restrictions because you're not a formal election observer, but you do have a right to be in that space as long as you're not disrupting the business of the office. All of this is to say that if somebody wanted to stand in the clerk's office during the time after absentee ballots have been sent out and watch people, whatever activities are happening, people getting licenses, people bringing their ballots back, any of those things, as long as they're not disrupting the business of the clerk's office, they can do those things. They are not formal election observers, as that term is used in statute. I say all of this because it's very important to understand that the rights that election observers have are set out by statute, and that's a matter of statewide concern, meaning that the legislature has said they are the ones that have full control over that area of the law. That is not something that we as a municipality, you as a common council, can make your own rules about. You can't make rules that supersede the statutes and the forthcoming election observer administrative rule. That rule is currently working its way through the process, and after probably the end of March, will be sent to the Wisconsin Legislative Council for the next phase of that process. So my point is, I understand the thought process behind the communication. It's not something that we can't change our policies, practices, ordinances to go in a different direction than what state law allows and requires. We are bound by what the state statutes and the WEC say in this particular regard. And I also just want to point out that there are mechanisms already for people to access what's going on in the government building. That just, the only distinction is that you're not a formal election observer. This is not necessarily a problem. The access already exists. Questions?
I've heard people complain that at one of the elections, once the city hall doors locked at 5, whatever time on an election day, the observers were told they had to leave.
So you are allowed to be in City Hall during the hours that it is open to the public. So that's where the distinction between being a formal election observer and just being someone who's allowed to be in the building observing what's happening in government, that's where that distinction becomes important. On election day, the only place that any observable activity is happening in the building is at central count, which for now has been happening on the 4th floor of the building. Observers are allowed to be in that place, but there's no other observable election activity happening in the building, and that's why nobody is allowed to be anywhere else.
So certified observers can stay after the doors are locked?
If you are an observer at central count and only in that area.
Do we have the abilities to extend our hours in City Hall through election hours to be open to the public?
I think just in the one election, the doors were locked. I realized last week, I don't think they were. I think there was just one election maybe previously where City Hall closed at 5 p.m., but it wasn't. And I don't know if there's any intention to do that this year.
And the doors do remain unlocked because people have to be able to return their ballots to the clerk's office.
Right, I mean, you said they can be in the building as long as it's open to the public. Can we extend our hours on election day until, so that we're technically open to the public?
Yeah, that'd be a request for the operations from the Parks Department, since their hours.
So we would have that ability. What things, okay, so you distinguish the difference between observer and someone just here watching and how they have access and rights differently. What, can you elaborate a little bit the difference of an observer versus the other? Like if they do see something that they want to question or clarify, can anybody call that out, or do you have to be an observer in order to, I don't want to use the word challenge, but if something is in question that?
Sure, so you're saying somebody who's just here in the building sees something. So anybody always has the opportunity to bring any challenge to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. You can always make a complaint that way. If you if the clerk is available, you can ask questions to the clerk. However, that goes back to making sure that you're not disrupting the activities of the office. And so that's not something that I can kind of give you like a blanket statement on. That would be on a case-by-case basis.
But anybody could, you don't have to be an observer in order to.
Sure, anybody when there's no election happening, somebody could stand in the clerk's office and ask questions of the staff.
Okay.
For what an observer can do at central count.
At
What an
central
observer
count?
can do, yeah. Because I think that was the first part of your question, what an observer can do, what an election observer can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Are you talking about just when ballots are, when there's like in-person voting happening in the clerk's office or at central count? Those are two very different things.
And that's where I'm wondering, that's where I'm asking if there's clarification of, is there a difference where, like I said, someone just watching, no, they can't ask questions, or no, they cannot challenge something, it would have to be a registered observer. Is there any difference in that?
So any election observer who's there during an observable election activity and is signed in and all of those, meets all those requirements, following all the rules and everything else, they can ask either the chief inspector or the clerk, they can ask questions and they have a right to have those questions answered.
Okay.
Like I said, in the other circumstance, that would really be based on, what else is going on in the office on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can I motion to open?
Yeah. Second it.
Before we do that, you want to make a comment regarding Alderman?
Oh, and I apologize, Alder Weary was intending to be here tonight at a family emergency, so he could not attend.
Take a motion to open the floor.
Motion open floor.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Okay, who would like to speak first? Ms. Juno?
There's people here too, but I don't, just in a minute, there's just a couple people on Zoom. I don't know if they're here for this item, but you all can take the people here first, but just before we close it, there may be somebody on Zoom.
Okay.
We're talking just right now in regard to the
Relax.
site.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you could state your name and your address for the record, please.
Sandy Juno, 616 Dauphin Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Former Brown County clerk. I'm retired, but I'm very active with election integrity, especially since the November of 2020 election. There's a lot of elected officials, electors, people that don't necessarily understand, the election process or the rules surrounding that. So since 2020, there's been a dedicated effort to help educate the electors about the election process. And part of that is also training people to be observers at the polling locations or at central count, early voting. We want them to know what the rules are, that their behavior is expected to be courteous and kind. We want them to be a part of the team and not necessarily separate from the team. And I can honestly state, since we've started this effort, our main focus is always on Green Bay just because of the size of the community. We've had some very positive feedback and interactions at the polling locations. I think sometimes, the poll workers that are working, they may have limited training, they may forget things, and to have extra ears and eyes watching the process and bringing it to the attention of the chief inspector has been a very positive thing. There are some issues that we have had, not so much in the polling locations, but mostly in regard to the city clerk's office. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So, first of all, I'm here to encourage the council's support to provide improved election period access for the public to observe absentee voting processing in City Hall in the 6 weeks prior to election. That would mean from the time the city typically receives the ballots from the county clerk's office up into election night when they're closing down and receiving the USB sticks, the ballots, and the supplies from the election site. That would allow everyone to understand the full process as what's going on. Improved access for the public is really necessary so that they feel confident in our election processes and the integrity of the election. Right now, the public's access is somewhat limited. They can observe. We would like to have them observe, like I said, the whole process from the time the ballots are received, the absentee ballots, the labels generated and leaving the city clerk's office, having them be able to observe as they come back, whether through the mail or if people drop them off in the clerk's office, and all the way through election night, when you have your poll workers bring back all the supplies, ballots, and everything to the clerk's office. So the whole process is observed. We're not getting that right now, and I think maybe there's a little communication problem between people that are observers versus, clerk's office. In other communities, we do have access to do that type of performance. I did check with Brandon at the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and he said although the statutes don't specifically name out every single function, there's nothing in those statutes that prohibits any of these things. So it really would be something that you guys could decide, or the clerk could decide as a policy, what type of access you want to provide to the electorate to be able to observe the election process. And if there's nothing bad going on, people probably aren't even going to come and want to observe. But right now, I can certainly tell you that there are a lot of question marks surrounding Green Bay. And I think some of our appearances in courts have been part of that. So that would be one request. Right now, on election day, we've been told in the past that we don't have access to the clerk's office because it's not a voting day, or on the Monday prior to election day. There's 2 weeks before the election when you have in-person absentee voting. We do have access to observe in the clerk's office at that time to the activities going on, whether people are registering, voting, or just dropping off ballots. And I think we've worked through some issues that we've had on those days, and I think we have a pretty good system on that right now. But when it comes to the Monday before election and election day, observers have been prevented from being in the hallway outside the clerk's office or even observing in the clerk's office. And for a lot of people, that's really important to be able to have that access, just to identify what's happening in the clerk's office. They could give the feedback to their political parties. Yeah, we're having people come in and dropping off ballots. There's a lot, there's a few. So it's really an information-seeking point of view why your electors are here watching things. Not necessarily to say you're doing something wrong, but it's to be able to have that communication and information to bring back to your county, your state, and even national parties in some cases. And the media will probably want to know too. So that's one of the things that I think we would really like to see changed, to be able to have that freedom of access. The other thing is, right now we have designated times where we can ask questions. For example, during early voting, it's 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. So if something happens before that time or in between that time, and we have a question, we're not sure if something was done correctly or not, currently what we would have to do is sit on it until those times came about. And that's not really the best way to do business, because if something isn't being done right, typically you want to get that question answered right away, whether that's a correct process or no, that's not. So that's something, maybe a little bit more frequent hourly check-ins or something other than, long stretches of time between when an instance might happen and you have somebody that addresses that. The other thing that is kind of a question mark is, and not so much at a regular election at Central Count, but clearly for the 2020 November election, I was at Central Count. And the one thing that I always learned as a clerk is you have to be very careful with law enforcement being in the polling location, because that may cause people not to want to vote. They may look at that as a negative thing. You know, so typically in the past, you know, if you're gonna have law enforcement, they're typically outside the voting location. You know, so that, and when I was there in November of 2020, when I was there, there was at least 3 police officers all standing together in the back of the room. And I did get complaints from some people that were observing, that they felt they were unnecessarily questioned about why they were there. So I think that's something in the future we have to be very careful about, not to single people out. And clearly if somebody's disruptive or doing some kind of behavior that's causing a negative effect, we do want to address that. But, you know, the intimidation factor is something we have to be careful of as well.
Hey, could I just ask one question just for clarification?
Yeah.
When you say observer, you mean observers, not a spectator who's observing?
If you're an observer, what really is going to be the difference is you are asked to sign in at a log and present your ID.
Right.
That becomes an official record of the election. Typically, I think for the most part, inspector or people observing on election day, for the most part, are signed in. You know, if there was somebody outside, let's say the clerk's office, that wasn't necessarily signed in as an observer, that would probably be more like the spectator type thing that you're asking about.
Right. So these are people who have gone through the training and been, they're, I don't know if it's a certification or whatever, but they are, let's even use the word professional or trained.
It's, training isn't required, but I think both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have really put a lot of effort in the last couple of years to make sure if, you know, we're sending people to be observers in these polling locations, they know what the expectation is as far as the statutes. They know what the expectation is of representing their party or their person.
They're assigned. They're
We
assigned.
typically, we assign them
Right.
just so that we know where we have coverage. I can't speak for the Democrats, but they probably have something similar.
Yeah, I think, right.
Yeah.
If you're going to be in a, yep.
Can I interject? I think you're getting confused between election inspectors and election observers. So
No, not
anyone-
inspectors, spectators. I want to know that she's talking about, when she says observers, we're talking about people who have been chosen by the parties and assigned to these places. They're not a spectator. They're not just somebody coming in from off the street.
An observer can be anyone that comes off the
Correct.
street.
There's no requirement for training.
Yeah, there's no,
There's no requirement for
Ah,
training, so
okay. That clarifies. I thought there was.
anybody who comes
Okay.
into that election area is bound by the same rules.
Okay.
And Green Bay is very good at giving anyone who signs in those rules so that they know what the expectation is.
Okay.
So,
There's training for poll workers.
Strength of vote, right.
The other thing is, there used to be a bench outside the clerk's office, and, you know, after a while, it just kind of disappeared. And I guess I would ask for maybe there to be some chairs or something, because even when I am observing early voting, a lot of times there are elderly people that come in, and every now and then you get a line. It would be nice to have a place for people who may want to sit or who are assisting someone else to sit when they're there. So that's just something that I think would be an added benefit. Let's see. The other thing I've had some issues with, as far as a political party goes, we like to know when the people that we have nominated to be poll workers are assigned to a polling location. And in most municipalities throughout the state, if you request a list of who those poll workers are for the election, prior to the election, you have access to that data. When I've requested it, I've been told that I need to put in a FOIA request through the law department, and I don't get that information oftentimes 4 to 6 weeks till after the election. I know you probably have a process for going over FOIA things, because there may be stuff you want to redact. But that would be an area that I think would be beneficial to both parties, again, just to be able to know if your people have been assigned a polling location, in that case, who it is and where they've been assigned. And the same holds true for any of our special voting deputies. So those are probably the two things that I request the most FOIAs on, because I don't have any other avenue to go through to get the information that I'm seeking. Our founders in this government, want this to be an open government. And I think we all want it to be the best it can be. So I'm hoping that we have an opportunity through Chris's communication here today to maybe work on some of the areas that we've identified where we could make some improvements. I know that what we'll be putting forth some new rules on this, which will be finalized. But I also wanted to say that sometimes I'm kind of concerned about where we're going to be for the November election for Central Count. In 2020, it was over at the Resch Center. There was a wide open space, and I think that was very conducive to, operating successfully and allowing people to observe the different areas that you want to observe. For example, I observed last week, and a lot of times what you have is, groups of poll workers that are stationed along the wall. And in some cases, they might be sitting face to face, or they both might be facing the wall. But as an observer, what you see is their backs. You don't really see any of the ballot certificates or anything, or even a log sheet. And even just with speaking into a wall, it's not as easy to hear. So, I would kind of like to say if we had a little bit more space, maybe we could look at some type of seating that makes it more allowable for any observers to have better access as to what they're observing. That would be my request. Other than that, I'll take any questions if you have any.
Just have you broached any of these with the clerk?
She's not very communicative with me, so no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just basing it upon our interactions over the last couple of years, what we've been dealing with. So, I mean, when I typically ask her something, I'm referred to do a FOIA with the law department. And sometimes, all you're looking for is a draft of a list of poll workers that are assigned. And that should be a pretty easy manner to print it off a printer. But in these regards, I'm asked to send it to the law department, and 4 to 6 weeks later, I'll get the list. Well, that's like 4 to 6 weeks too late. So I'm just saying I'd really like to have better communication in that area so that observers and parties can be a part of the team and not feel like they're shut out from the process. So.
Question. You said nothing prohibits us from doing that. You got that information from WEC, was that?
The attorney at WEC, yeah.
Okay, and then...
It doesn't specifically prohibit anything beyond those in the statutes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
And then you said there's other communities that allow this. Do you know which municipalities, like for example, that do?
De Pere is very open, Schwabenau is very open, Alloway, pretty much all the surrounding areas.
Okay.
The towns might be a little iffier just because they don't have full-time clerks, so it might be a little bit more difficult to make arrangements with them.
Okay.
You asked my questions.
All right.
I had it written down, so. Any other questions?
No. I just want to thank Jamie for doing an awesome job at Central Count. She has done some amazing things there as far as transparency. She has a big chart with all the polling boards, the number of ballots they're getting in. When you want to observe the 450 running, you're at a table where you can easily see what's going on. So I hope I'm not sounding all doom and gloom. I'm just looking at it from a big picture to say, you know, we have some good things going on, but there's some areas of improvement too.
Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on this item?
Do we have any on Zoom?
Oh, do we have any on Zoom?
You can call and ask them if they'd like to unmute and speak. If they did, there's just 3 people on.
Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak on this issue, item?
Don't usually get to see.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I
can
don't
you see
see
who's on?
It's, I'm sorry, it's minimized. Alder Johnson is on, Alyssa Prophet, and someone referenced, it's just his iPhone. So, they can unmute if they want to speak.
I got a question for legal.
Well, we should close the floor if there's nothing else.
Yes.
I'll speak.
Okay, come on. Can you state your name and your address, please?
Bonnie Razor, 419 East LaCaplan Circle. I wasn't prepared to speak, so I don't have anything. I just want to reiterate a lot of what Sandy Juneau said. We have a really big, as a city, we have a really big election this year, as you know. And I would hope you, as a council, would want to avoid issues that we've had in the past, knowing that this is going to be a very contentious year. And I certainly don't think that we need to have more egg in our face than we've had in the past. So I do agree with transparency and more than less. If there's nothing nefarious going on, they should have no problem letting people observe, whether they're official observers or just spectators, so to speak. To the attorney's point, observers of the city government who are not officials observers have in fact felt not allowed or welcome in our city government, city hall. I, for one, was not felt welcome in November of 2022. So I would say that that is something we should always expect from our city government, is a welcoming environment, respectful environment, and I can't say that that's always the case. So I agree that with Sandy about seeing the process from the start of the election period till the election day. And just to clarify, Mr. Scannell, that election observers are allowed at in-person absentee voting and at polling locations and at central count. So anything outside of those times that Sandy had mentioned would be considered what you call spectator observing. So, I guess that's, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer, but it's,
Question?
okay. Thank you
All right,
very
thank
much,
you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yep.
I'll take a motion to close the floor.
Yeah, let's do it. Motion to close the floor.
You ready to have a second?
I can go into this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Floor is now closed.
So now there are official, I'm sorry, you had questions first. You said, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if we would want to address some of the things like adding to have seating and some of the things that Ms. Juneau has brought up. Is that something we'd have to amend this? I know we have 2 full council meetings and 1 more protection meeting before the election in April. But would we need to address that, amend this one to get some of that stuff added, or would that be something to bring up as a separate issue?
My recommendation would be that any suggestions you all want to see would be referred to staff anyway, and so if those are additional things that you would like us to look into, you can include those, and our department will work with the clerk's office to provide additional information and recommendations on those.
Thank you.
So there are official observers, and
Yes.
that's what I was trying to get at. Official observers and spectators, that there is a difference.
Yes, the difference is that during times that, like Ms. Razor alluded to, during the things that are actually observable, so central count, in-person voting, and at the polling locations, there's only official observers. There's nobody there that's just watching what's happening. You have to be a formal election observer at those times.
And that's all pretty regulated by state statute.
By statute, yep. What the communication seeks to do is address some of those times where you're not a formal election observer already under the state statutes. So like watching the envelopes get labeled or mailed out or those kinds of things, right now under state statutes, nothing in there says you have a right to observe those opportunities. You have a right to observe those activities.
Okay. But it's,
But if you happen to be standing in the clerk's office and the clerk's office staff are doing those things, you can watch it.
okay. But if I understand right, we were just talking about observers, official observers.
No. We're talking-
Spectators.
We're talking
The
about
floor's not
both.
open, sorry, but I believe in, if you want to open it to go back,
Right.
but I believe I'll represent their position accurately in the communication. What the communication seeks to do is to make those additional times formal, observable things where you would be a formal election observer, whether you're watching something that is currently a formal observable thing under statute, or whether you're watching one of these other things, like labeling the envelopes, mailing out the envelopes, watching,
Okay.
you know, the mail get delivered, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No?
I guess I'd like to say, that I think all of us are getting sick. I don't care which side you're for or what your political beliefs are. I think everybody wants to quit hearing about elections not going right. So I'm going to be in for Alderman Weary's thing here. I know we all want to have the elections open and transparent. The attorney, Mr. Hunsater from the WECs, that said that we can, as a council, can ask to change things like hours and stuff like that. So I'm going to be for this myself.
Well, I don't know what we're for. I wish he had made specific recommendations. This is just so generic, I don't know what to do with it. I would rather he come back, if he had sat down and came with specific things that then staff could have looked at and we could have, how can we have a discussion really, just for things that have just been told us now? It's too, I think it should have been part of the communication, have it specified, that we could refer to staff and get specific responses to.
From what I know, in the past, there've been complaints because at one election in the last 5 years, observers that were supposed to be allowed to observe were not allowed to. They were removed from a previous election. So this is more or less to make sure that
Well,
they'll be able to observe it until the count is finished.
well, I don't know why they
Guarantees it.
were removed, or, I mean, again, that's I don't know why they're removed or what's going on there. And again, I would think they would, if there's an issue, go to the WEC.
But
Go to the
that's too late.
state.
After the election, it's too late.
Well, there's still, well, you said that was 5 years ago. What,
In the last 5 years.
in the last 5 years, if people complained, those complaints were,
I don't know what the WEC did with them.
I think they ruled on them. And I think those complaints were set aside. Like many complaints made since 2020.
I truthfully couldn't tell you what the WEC did.
Yeah, well,
Like I said, if we want to have an open, transparent election, I don't know what this will hurt.
well, I don't know either. I would like to hear specifics and get specifics back on it. There's a reason why it's not a state statute. I know the WC took up recently looking at these procedures and made no changes.
Well, they
So-
are right now, under 6.882, they are looking at changing it. But that can take, 4 weeks can take 8 weeks after our April elections.
That's what,
That's why Attorney Hunsater has said that council could make policy for things like hours and that.
out maybe with hours and stuff, I don't know. I would like
Could
to
you
know the
confirm
state.
that?
What's that?
His comment, Alder Morgan's comment?
Which comment?
About,
Comment that Brandon Hunsater, the attorney
I don't know
for
what
the
Attorney
WEC.
Hunsinger may have told anybody else. He hasn't expressed that opinion to me, and I wouldn't want to make any representations about what his opinion may or may not be. That would not be my opinion.
I believe
Yeah.
Ms.
And I have no
Juno
reason not to believe that,
was told
but I
that.
haven't spoken to Attorney Hunsinger directly about
Right.
that.
I'm just saying that we had testimony from Mrs. Juno here that Attorney Brandon Hunsaker did tell her that that is
Well, I-
feasible.
I want specifics that we could refer to staff, that staff could look at specifically and look at state statute and look at what's been done. Maybe they can check what's being done elsewhere if that's, I don't know if other places are in violation of state statute.
Can you tell me a reason this would hurt anything?
I have no idea. It may not, it may not. I don't know enough, is what I'm saying.
What are you afraid of?
Nothing. I'm afraid of making a decision that impedes the clerk doing her work. There's a reason why the state has made, there's a reason why the city, I'm very nervous about the city making policies about election law. There's a reason why it's done by the state. Because local officials you open the door to possible corruption, you open the door to making things a mess. We don't have the expertise for this. The state and the WEC, that's their game, not ours. And if there's some flexibility, fine. You know, I'm willing to look at anything but I'm not just gonna jump in and say, this is good or bad. I have no idea. I want specifics that we can then refer to staff. They can look at the statute, they can talk to the Attorney General and everybody else that needs to get feedback. And then they can bring that to us and we can discuss that or whatever and decide from that. So I would rather either receive and place on file and Alder Weary sit down and come back with specific proposals, or we refer this to staff and Alder Weary bring staff specific proposals that then can be brought back to us. I don't know if it much matters either way. Because this is just, I mean, what Ms. Juno brought up, none of that's in this communication.
Well, okay, I have a question. Why can't, I mean, ultimately, if we agree on this, you guys would need to, we'd have to refer it to staff anyway. So what's the harm in referring it to staff and having you working with Alder Weary?
There isn't a harm, but I would agree that we would just need some direction as to what you'd like us to draft, because it is somewhat of a general referral. But if you'd like to refer it to staff, we can communicate with him as we would do all of you if you're requesting us to draft something.
Okay,
From a note, just sorry to chime in, from a public notice perspective, just a generic refer to staff with direction to work with one particular alder doesn't provide the public a lot of notice on what you're asking staff to work on. So we would ask for as much specific direction as you can provide us.
okay, which I'm willing to do. I do have a question though, because you brought up the state level. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's been some incidences where WEC has been contacted on the day of and they said it's under the clerk's discretion to make that decision. So what I'm saying is it's not up to the state, and that's why it's very important to have observers on site, because then whatever decision the clerk makes, that can then be challenges. Am I correct on that? I feel like there have been times that the WEC actually refers it back to the clerk and does not give her guidance on how she should handle a situation.
That happens, that largely
So-
depends on what the situation is.
But it does happen.
Sure.
So that's where Alder Scannell, I think it's important to have observers because they need to be on site so that, because it's not happening.
Are we talking official observers or spectators now? I really like to make that distinction.
Official observers. So
Okay, official observers, all right.
So what I believe the purpose of this communication, so I'm going to make a motion to refer this to staff to write up a policy to allow observers, official observers, to witness the entire process, starting with the absentee ballots 6 weeks prior to the election through the election. Do you need more detail?
Do you have more detail? I will take as much detail as you can provide.
Okay, and
That's still very broad, but that's.
sure, and yeah, I would like to see, I want to make sure that
What kind of things do you want them to observe? That'd be-
the absentee ballots being labeled, sent out, received. I would also like to see, because I have gotten complaints about available seating, and I want to make sure that we are being courteous of elderly and handicap observers. So I want to make sure that if we can get a bench back out there, not sure why that was removed. I just want to make sure that we are being considerate of everybody in the city hall. But yeah, I don't, and also have it public and available, a list of the poll workers and locations.
Okay. We can work with that one. That last one doesn't relate to observers.
Okay,
So something
But
separate.
it shouldn't be an issue because it's already a public record.
okay.
And I have a history of when they've been requested and responded, and I'm happy to share that if you'd like. But they
Sure.
haven't been denied access to that.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Oh, we haven't denied access, you said, and access to, we haven't denied access to the poll worker list. We do redact their home addresses, I believe.
Yep, but are we requiring an open records request to obtain that?
They're always processed through our office, it's just how it works. If you'd like the clerk to have it on hand, that would probably be a separate item, but I can talk about that. It's not a confidential document, so it's just a matter of when it's ready.
Okay.
Does that say the location of where they're assigned?
Yes, by ward or central count.
Is that
So it would have to
only
be separate.
available before or after the election?
It's available before the election because it's being used, the election.
But to the
Just
public?
transitions. Well, I'm looking at one where you requested it, and you had it in 3 days before the election, so I mean, we can go through the list if you'd
Which
like.
one was that?
I'm looking at 2022, 23 was requested on April 11th, it was responded to, not in 4 to 6 weeks, but.
No,
we
but
can
that
talk
was
about these
after,
separately.
that was after the election.
That you requested it after, yeah.
Yeah, April 11th is after,
Yes, that's when she requested it, after.
because she couldn't get it prior
I
possibly?
don't know anything about the before part, but we can go through that separately, but it's not an issue, it's not withheld. If there's a problem with the timing when it's delivered, that's just a question for the clerk, and we can work on that.
Okay.
But to Attorney Mather's point, that's separate from the election observers.
Okay.
You know, ask me what I'm afraid of. What are you afraid of?
Then people are gonna say we're not being transparent. I have one question now. If we refer this back to staff, okay, we have probation, protection policy meetings on March 11th, March 25th. We have full councils on March 5th and March 19th. Is that something that staff would be able to complete and get back to us for us to refer it back to council before April 2nd? That it could in fact be in place for April 2nd?
Could probably have an answer for you about that on Tuesday, but I don't know about today. We have to talk to the city attorney about that.
I mean, regardless, this is the first step, correct?
So we need a second?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll
Is
second
that your
it.
motion?
Oh, I thought you did second. I thought you were just doing it.
No,
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
And could I just clarify, are we keeping have the public available list of poll workers, or is that being removed? Is that part of the?
Arbitrary quota, I mean.
It doesn't have to be part of the
Okay.
communication.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do think it's important that observers and spectators are on their best behavior. That has not always been the case. So if we can, that will make a big difference.
For number 2 and number 3.
All right, thank you. So of course, everything that's talked about tonight is just a suggestion of the common council for final approval, which will be March 5th at 6 p.m.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Ready? Okay, on to number 2. I will take a motion.
Motion to suspend the rules 2 through 6.
All right, do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, staff, any questions, comments?
No.
Please?
Please concur.
Okay. Motion to approve?
Yeah, we didn't vote on
Oh, voting?
A motion to suspend the rules?
That's
Yeah.
motion to suspend the
A
rules.
second?
All in
Oh, did he
favor?
second?
Yep.
He seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Ayes
Okay.
have it. All right.
Motion to adopt, or approve.
Approve. Do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes? Ayes have it.
We just want to make a note for those in the audience that was approved, but pending council approval on Tuesday. I'm sorry, your usual announcement, Alder Stevens, about the final, did you make that announcement?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
You were over.
Apologize. Apologize. So if you were here for 2 through 6, we're done. Okay, good. Just checking with the audience.
Yeah, you're.
Sorry.
Ready?
I was just making sure the folks in the audience have been waiting this whole time, you. See you soon. Thank you.
Who's the guy that's leaving?
He had a liquor
Okay,
license.
all right,
Yeah.
sound good. All right, on to number 7, consideration of possible action on a request by Keith Williams in regards to a denial of his operator's license. One moment. Staff?
I'm going to defer to the police
All right,
department.
please.
We recommended denial based on his past criminal history. He had felonies on his record, so that pretty much triggers the automatic
Right.
denial.
How far, when were those felonies?
I see there was one in 2014. Let's see here. Then he had some other minor trespassing issues in 2015. Unlawful use of a phone, so pretty much forfeitures, but it was a felony in 2014 that was a serious one.
So 10 years ago.
Yeah, but his most recent is a misdemeanor conviction in 2016, taking a vehicle without consent.
Anything else? All right.
Given that information, since it was 16, let me add it up, quite a while ago, I feel there hasn't been any problems since then. Usually, for me, time elapsed is a good indicator that this is no longer related to the state statute. It gives us that language to use. So, as far as I'm concerned, I could approve the appeal right now, and if we could just, most people want to hear from
This is Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams.
Okay, I believe he said the last one was 2016, so depending on.
No, 16 for the,
Auto theft,
that was the felony,
yes.
right?
Anyway, that's
That was a misdemeanor.
The-
No, that was the
The
mis-
auto theft was a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so
that was
it's,
8 years, okay.
yeah, so it's, so unless anybody needs to hear from him, I'm ready to make a motion. That's so let's open the, do we open the floor? Yeah,
No, we haven't done it.
no, we do hear from him.
Yeah, can I ask where your employment,
We'll ask what?
where he's
I
looking
think
to
we
gain
need
employment?
to.
Then we can open the
Open
floor. If you want to talk, then open the floor.
He's
Yeah,
here.
so motion
It's
open the
an appeal.
floor.
You don't have to open the floor. It's
Okay.
an appeal. He's here to speak for himself.
Okay, well then,
Can't, I just ask if, yeah, where you're looking to.
I'm
gain
looking at Shaw on East Main Street, the Main Street
Okay.
Shaw. That's where I work at with Raymond and Jason.
Okay,
Yeah,
so gas station, okay.
yeah.
you've been working there how long?
Almost going on 4 months next month.
Main and Abrams?
Huh?
Main and Abrams?
No, here on Green Bay here.
John?
I
Oh.
don't-
Oh,
East Mason?
I
East Main
I meant
Street
to
at
say
Abrams?
Main Street down here. My bad. On the Shaw on Main Street.
At Abrams Street?
Yes, sir.
And what do you do there,
I'm a cashier.
cashier? And hours,
I work from 3 to 10.
3 to 10?
It rotates every week. Last week was my long week. This is my short week. He tries making everyone comfortable. Work hours exactly the same amount as everyone else.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yes, I do, sir.
You don't
I
see
just
a lot of
bought my
that on
second
the
vehicle.
forms here. Is that normal? I didn't see a lot of that stuff on some of our forms.
No, what we got was the generic
Yeah.
I just bought myself a second vehicle today.
notifications. Yeah.
Could you just state your name and your address for the record?
Keith Williams, P.O. Box 283, Townsend, Wisconsin 54175.
Okay.
Since we opened them, or since you
We
had
didn't
it.
open before.
Right.
We have in the past.
This is
Do you have anybody else here to
Raymond.
talk for you?
Not tonight, no. Raymond said he had stuff to do with his kids.
Did you have anything you wanted to tell us?
I'd really like to keep this job. I like working with the people that I work with. I have completed probation. I handed this lady here to hand Mr. Stevens here the completion of my probation. And I have learned from my mistakes big time. I'm a father of 2 kids. I have a 3-year-old now, so
Congratulations.
thank you.
I have nothing.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Thank you. Do you know when I'll be able to get that paperwork?
After March 5th?
This has to go to
March
the council.
6th, so I can send you a detailed email tomorrow, just
Okay.
kind of recap
Okay.
the dates.
Thank you.
This still has to be approved by council. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Have a great night, guys.
You too. Ready?
Yes.
And where are we? Number 8, consideration of possible action on the appeal by Leslie Newton in regards to denial of her operator's license. Police Department?
She also has a felony conviction which triggered the automatic denial. That was from 2008.
Does she not have
It
any
was for
felonies?
operating while revoked, 4th and above. The most recent, she does have a misdemeanor conviction of possession of THC in 2018. And she had an OWI with a minor passenger in 2013. So for those, that's why we recommended the denial.
Okay, thank you.
Which one were felonies?
It was the OAR, she had so
2008.
many OARs way back in.
08.
2008.
Yep. And she did make a response, we have that in the packet.
Yeah, I'm not a felon.
She was charged with the felony, it was pled out, I believe, down to misdemeanor.
Oh, so she wasn't,
But yeah, the totality of all those is why we recommended habitually poor driving, then the recent THC conviction, plus conviction having a minor in the car.
that can be major.
That was 2013,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
11 years ago.
Yeah. So again, with, given what we just heard from PD and the response Ms. Stack made in her, that we have that in the packet, feel quite comfortable approving this appeal without going any further. If
Do
anybody
you wish to speak?
I was actually, have already been in this situation before. I
We
was,
need to
Name and address.
Oh, name and
open up
address.
the.
oh, Leslie
You don't have to open the
Newton,
first, you just need to say
Oh,
name and
okay.
address. Sorry.
Leslie Newton, 518 Froman Street.
Thank you. Your question?
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. I've actually already been in this situation before. Everything that PD spoke about was already, we've already gone through this, and I was approved through my appeal at that time. I just never renewed my license, and so now I am a business owner, and I'm trying to like get some extra income in. So the bartending is kind of what works with my schedule to be able to have the availability to open during the day for my clients. So that's why I went through the process again. So I was just a little confused, you know, why I did get denied this time, since I kind of already went through this once.
Is it-
Probably because
was
you
it-
didn't get the license.
No, I did
No,
get
she
it, I just
didn't.
didn't renew it.
She didn't renew it.
Each process is new, each time someone applies.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't renew it, so then I had to reapply again.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
What's your business?
Eyelash extensions. I opened up a studio out in Howard on Bell, so.
Check
So
that
what-
out, all their scandal.
Yeah.
And where will you be working with alcohol?
So, the Alibi just opened up recently, and he was looking for some bartenders. So there's an opportunity there, but I was also applying for some more chain restaurants for their bartending, that they're a little open later. So like Old Chicago and stuff like that. I applied to Old Chicago, Longhorn Steakhouse, Rivers Bend, you know, some places like that to be able to bartend. When you know, I looked at serving, but serving starts a lot earlier shift-wise, so the bartending just kind of fit a little bit more into my schedule, and then I'm able to even still, you know, get some rest and then open up my studio.
So just for clarification, this does not cover Ashwaubenon.
Correct.
Just only for the city.
Or Howard.
Okay, that's good, okay.
River's
Good to
Bend.
know.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's in Howard. Where's the alibi?
that's on Broadway, right across from White Dog Black Cat.
Okay, yeah.
Are we allowed to ask PD if they have any complaints about the alibi?
You got-
We're just starting to go through a liquor license renewal, and we haven't had any complaints there, or I believe it was even Jekyll and Hyde before there, and we haven't had any complaints there either.
They haven't had to come up with any alibis?
I'm just not responding to you.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, final approval will be March 5th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Everyone
thank
have
you.
a good night.
Randy, I'll make an appointment with you.
Ready? Okay, on to, where are we? Number 9, consideration possible action on appeal by Mary Stack in regards to denial of her operator's license. Police Department?
This one kicked in automatic denial. There's a OWI third on record from 2018. I know it's not recent, but it's still within a time frame. That's what triggered the denial.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, given the time and nothing in between, I'm comfortable approving this. So if anybody has any questions or anything, I don't.
Can I just ask again where you're looking to be employed?
I actually work at the stadium for Delaware North,
Okay.
so I'm the premium club manager currently.
Premium Club.
Yeah,
Ooh. I'll never be there.
I didn't think so.
Just your name and address for the record.
It's Mary Stack, 2381 Remington Road, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54302.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? If not, we have.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a
Yep.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes
Thank
have
you.
it. Of course,
you.
March 5th, so.
I have to be here on March
Nope.
5th.
No, it's.
You don't need to be.
Necessarily.
This one will be
Yeah.
finally approved.
Final approval.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Number 10, consideration possible action on General Ordinance 524, an ordinance repealing Section 2180 and amending Section 2179 and 2327 of the Green Bay Municipal Code regarding to Economic Development Authority. Staff.
This communication was put in by Alder Johnson. I believe he's online if you'd like to hear from him. And then Director Renier Wig is also here from Community and Economic Development if you have questions. Or about perhaps Alder Johnson would like to speak to you. He's
I don't
on-
want to hear.
He's on Zoom.
Alder Johnson?
You took it out?
We're just trying to find my camera here. There we go. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
No.
Perfect. This was the communication we put in a while ago. You know, when Director Stack Schulte was still here, it was really a conversation. I served on the EDA for a couple of years, and there really wasn't a lot of content that came through, and it was really focused on the expansion of the industrial parks in particular. And so we started having a conversation about whether or not it was necessary to have. And so I think we need to do this more in government, that is talk about when things are no longer needed and trim the fat a little bit. And so there wasn't really any objection from staff to do this, where we could take a couple of the requirements or responsibilities of the EDA and really transfer them over to the RDA, and that the RDA could really take on both of those responsibilities. I mean, in Alder Morgan, I think you're in the EDA right now, and you probably know this just as well as anybody, it rarely meets. So, you know, why not just get rid of it, combine it with RDA, and that's what this ordinance is really designed to do, is clean up the language that would permit that to happen. So that's why I put it forward, so hope you support.
I'm not sure it's being combined, Alder Johnson, in that it might be just dissolving the EDA, because I believe the items that go to EDA now are gonna end up at finance instead of the RD. Because
Yeah,
there's city-
that's exactly right, Director. I apologize for misleading on that statement. It was, the idea was recognizing that some of those things would potentially go to RDA, but some of them would just go to finance as a binding, committee through that path. So I think it was really just, it's gonna go wherever it's needed, right?
Right. So the EDA was the conduit to get to council. So if the EDA is not there, it will go to finance to get to council final approval, so.
Right.
Right.
What does the annexation commission, because it's talking about that in there, I was assuming that that was something new, that you were combining a few and making an annexation commission. That's not,
I don't know, I cannot speak to this document,
okay.
this legal document.
Alder Johnson?
That's just the cleanup language, Alder Morgan, that's in the ordinances right now, because there's an EDA rep, I believe, on the annexation commission. If the EDA is dissolved, obviously you can't appoint an EDA rep. So it's just to clean up the language so that it's, so that it reads properly.
Thank you.
There is an annexation commission.
Yes,
I'm not
it's-
sure
it's
it's
just
ever met
changing.
since I've worked here.
Yeah, it's just changing to the representative from the plan commission.
Are you?
Instead of EDA, it's gonna be on their,
Okay.
It's
on
for the
their
Thomas
committee.
Scott, isn't it?
Alder
Yeah, that's
Grant's on
why
it.
I was put on it.
Okay. I'd like to
Really would
say,
like a meeting,
We've met.
I'd like
just
to
once.
say I am on the committee, and I enjoy being on the committee, but in 22, 23 months, I think I've met twice in committee. So he is correct on that.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you, Alder Johnson. All right, you ready?
No.
All right, on to number 11, consideration of possible action on General Ordinance 724 and ordinance amending Section 1089, Green Bay Municipal Code related to cigarette license. Staff.
Sure, this is just on the draft, it's a very simple change, state law change and required vaping. If you're selling electronic vaping devices, to add that to the same licensure. So now it's not just cigarette. If you look at the draft, it says cigarette, electronic vaping devices, and tobacco products to retailer license. That was a change in state law, and we're just responding to that change.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes. Nays? Ayes have it.
I was afraid that one was gonna go up this morning.
Informational clerk, licensing report, please.
Yes, thank you. So currently, the city has no available liquor licenses at this time. The city granted 3 available licenses that have not yet been issued. And then as far as reserve licenses, the city of Green Bay has a quota of 32 reserve licenses. We have issued 4, and we have granted 1 that has been granted but not yet issued.
Liquor violation report.
We have nothing to report at this time, no violations.
Thank you.
I'll concur.
A motion to receive and place in file.
Motion to receive it and place it on file.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn it.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Recording stopped.